Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Authentically Natural.
On today's episode, we're going to be talking about police brutality, and we have our featured guest, none other than my dad, the Donnie Freeman, to go with, the Kasey Freeman, the Donnie Freeman. And he is a former police officer for Tennessee Valley authorities and retired military, retired police, current employee of the state of Tennessee.
I am ready to get paid. You're right. I have done a lot of things, and I wanted to talk to these two young ladies about some of the things that I've seen. Maybe it can help some people out.
So, just starting the conversation about kind of the escalation of police brutality in the media, and I know we've had plenty of conversations about certain video clips that have been surfacing around and things like that. What are your thoughts when you see clips like George Floyd and see clips like Mike Brown and Sandra Bland and anyone else and even Breonna Taylor and multiple people of color getting killed?
To me, it seems like the system has become unbalanced, and a lot of police officers are probably being desensitized to reality, pretty much. There's a lot of different things out there now. What I see compared to the time that I was actually in and some of the officers that I've worked with, I think that it starts in the training. So definitely looking at some of the things that we came aboard doing and everything, they've just strayed away from it pretty much.
Okay. Because I was going to ask, what are your thoughts on, the climate of a police officer now as opposed to today? But, I mean, you pretty much just answered that with training. Can you think of what you all did differently in training that may differ from what police officers are doing now?
I think we were more close-knit and everything. We talked to each other because there was so many different nationalities that came together that it kind of brought some of the realism to each officer about taking away some of the stigmatisms about different races and everything. So I think that made the difference in the fact that, okay, you saw this person actually as a human being. Yeah. I don't know if that's so much the case right now. I think each person that actually goes into police work, they have a different viewpoint of who the enemy is as compared to who is not. So I think it takes that bonding during the training cycle to actually get away from some of that.
Also, I just wanted to ask, do you think that it makes a difference, as a police officer, if you live in the zone that you work? Because I know when you were a police officer, you would patrol Seward Sperry area, which was 7 minutes away from the house, but then you would also patrol further areas. Do you think that because police officers, most of the time they're not living in the zones that they work, does that matter?
I definitely do think that matters in the fact that your neighbors know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
When you actually deal with them, because that's basically your base, people that actually support you on what you're doing and everything. So when you live in those areas and everything, your work will carry forward. They will give you the support basically that you need. And you're going to respect your own area. That's just the last word right there. And people that see you in that area will have respect for you. So it's definitely a key aspect of the job.
That is so true. How do you think modern day people view police officers now? Do you think the profession is viewed as unethical or because at one point the profession was popularized, in the 90s and late 80s. So what do you think about it moving forward?
I think it has definitely changed. The old premise of serve and protect has definitely changed in the fact that right now, the people that you're serving and everything, you don't have their trust.
Yeah.
And that is something that it's hard to win over, and it's definitely hard to keep. The media has really changed the mindsets of a lot of people on the first end, but when you develop those relationships, and that's what you do as a police officer, you develop relationships with the people that you work for and work with. So if you're doing that, then they can see on the media aspect, okay, these are cops that are doing this, but I know this guy, and I know
Yeah.
what he's doing. So
Yeah.
I think when you start in your own area, you do your own work, and you keep that going, that makes such a difference with the supports that you get. Because face it, even if you're a cop and everything, you can't do anything without your citizens that actually let you know who the bad people are,
That's true.
where the drugs are, where you need to be stationed and everything. If you don't have that kind of support, you're just walking around with a gun and a baton
Yeah.
and thinking that you're making a difference, but you got to have that support.
Jasmine, I'd like to ask you, like, you go into the schools as a recruiter often, and you recruit people to go into secondary education.
Yeah, I did.
Yes. And I know that you have to be 21 to be a police officer.
Mhm.
So, like, do you run into a lot of students who are thinking about that, or
Yeah.
who maybe consider, like, do you see police departments out there at recruitment fairs just as much as you are?
So right now, when I was a recruiter, I didn't, because my main focus was to get them in a 2-year system. But now, since I'm a career coach, I have had a few students, and what I'm doing now currently, I'm trying to establish the senior workshops. And one of the things that I'm so glad our campus police at the institution I work for is doing, he's going to hold like sessions, self-defense sessions at the high school. And I think like what Mr. Freeman was saying, like building those relationships and that trust, like being that aid in the community. But I really haven't heard a lot of young people wanting to be police officers anymore.
That is kind of like a thing that you really have to look at, because not everybody's cut out to be a police officer.
That's
You
true.
have to realize, in this country, we feel that we can really be anything we want to be. But I think it takes a certain type of person to be an officer. For one thing, the first thing that you have to do when you become an officer is you have to prepare yourself for the fact that you may not come home. And that's a hard thing to do and a hard thing to actually look at. But when you actually step into that role, you have got to start from day one to say, I know for a fact that action always beats reaction. A good cop knows you're not going to react until the action is done, because if you can't, you can't. Because if you do that, then you're violating somebody else's rights. But if you think about it and you walk around with the premise of, okay, reaction is never gonna beat action. So you have to really be prepared. First thing, you've got to make peace with your God. And you've got to actually say, every day that you go to work, if he's not protecting me, then I'm walking into whatever.
Yeah.
And any way you look at it, you're not going to draw a weapon quicker than somebody that already knows what they're going to do. You're just not going to do it.
Yeah.
So you have to really look at it from that premise, I think. If you're not willing to do it like that, either you're going to get killed or you're going to kill somebody unjustifiably. Because if you don't look at it at those two arenas, then you're going to walk around in fear. That's the biggest thing that kills cops right now. If you're scared, you can't be a cop, because the first thing you've got to do is you got to overcome those fears. I know a lot of stops and everything that I've worked, it's a long walk from your squad car all the way up to the other car. And when you get there, you don't know what you're going to expect or what to expect. So you've got to really first overcome the fear. A lot of the things that I see happening now, shootings and everything, it's mostly because of fear, and it's really because we don't really understand each other.
Yeah.
Because we do the same thing as cops as most people do in their everyday life, in the fact that we can't talk about certain subjects. We can't talk about politics and remain civil. We can't talk about religion and remain civil. But as a cop, you got to be able to talk to other cops so that you can say to them, you know what, how do you see this? And what should I take from you? So I think that's a big part of where we are today, is because first, you haven't made that first commitment to say, I will do what it takes to make sure that I'm making sure that your rights are not violated. And I still want to go home at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You've got to be well trained and you got to have a good mindset to do that.
Mm. Wow.
Jazz, I kind of just want to go back a little bit because we talked about like that, your reaction to seeing some of the clips, but Jazz and I didn't really talk about that too. So like hearing this piece of like how it all works and like, you know, I'm sure you've heard it before, but for those who are listening to the podcast, like hearing this whole thing, like, and just replaying and rethinking about like officers walking up to the cars and like stuff like that. Like, what are you thinking?
Just in general, if I get stopped?
I guess like both, because I was gonna ask that next. So like if you get stopped or if like seeing like all of the clips that's circulating around on social media.
So right now, like, okay, let me tell y'all, so I did get stopped. This was like during the summer. And you know, I ain't gonna lie, I was pushing the pedal to the metal. Okay, I was getting in that Volkswagen, and he flagged me, and I knew he did, and I was like, oh my God, I'm so scared. So you know, you try to ease your foot off the gas. So that's what I was doing. I was trying to go as slow as possible, and he was behind me. I said, oh my God, my heart just started racing, and I called Tyler. I said, hey, I just want you to know, I just got stopped. Text my mom, hey, I just want you to know I got stopped. I made sure I told people, hey, I've gotten stopped. I don't know what's going to happen. Thankfully, he was great. He didn't even give me a ticket. He was just like, hey, like, slow down. But I was so nervous because I didn't know who I was going to get.
True.
So I just was so nervous. And I've not had negative experiences with police officers. At least I haven't personally. But it's kind of like that knock on wood situation of, wow, I haven't had any negative experiences, but what if someone tries me or does something and I'm the only one in the car? You know, that's just scary. And it's my word against theirs. That is scary. That's terrifying.
I think like for me, like my experience, like seeing it all happen, when I honestly just don't even know if I can handle watching a lot of it. Like I haven't even been able to make it all the way through when they see us without being upset. Like I just cannot like it just makes me so angry till I have to turn it off because then I will physically like not be okay.
It's emotionally like it is scarring. I cried myself to sleep.
Yeah.
Beside my mom. It was just too much.
A little overdramatic.
But that movie, you saw the whole thing? That movie make you scared. Especially if you have sons. I got a whole baby dog over here. Baby boy dog. It made me think about him.
I will say this too. My last interaction my last interaction with the police officer was while I was still a reporter. And okay, so granted, I was not getting pulled over, but I was a reporter. Y'all know I work morning shift.
Yeah.
At work at 2 a.m. And this was right after the riot downtown Nashville, and I was going to like cover it, and they had put the curfew on Nashville, and they blocked off all of the streets.
Mm-hmm.
So where the station is that I work for is right downtown, and it was blocked off. And obviously, like if I'm sitting there, I mean, I'm trying to get to work, and the officer's not supposed to let anybody go back there, and I'm black, and I'm in this car, and I shouldn't be downtown because of the curfew. I literally I sat there and I was like, God, please just let me get into please just let this go. Okay. Right. Because at 2 a.m., like, who am I calling? Like everybody's asleep. Like no one's really right. So I shut off my lights, like in my car, so that like it wasn't blinding him so he could see me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I literally just was like, I'm just trying to get to work. I'm just trying to get to work. Like, I feel like I've never had an experience like that because, like, my dad's a police officer. So even when I have gotten pulled over, I feel like I'm a little, like, too innocent in the fact, because I'm like, well, my dad was a great police officer. Like, if I'm being respectful, there should be no reason why they're not respectful towards me.
Yeah.
But that's not always how it happens either. You know what I mean?
Exactly. That's like in my hometown too. Like my cousin was the chief of police, and I mean, it wasn't like I felt untouchable, but I was just like, he's over y'all. So if I tell him something has happened to his baby cousin, you know, he's going to feel a certain way about it. He's going to reprimand you or talk to you at least. So I totally get that. I get that.
You know, I'll tell you something funny though. From a police point of view, even when you're going through training and everything, each police officer has this one group of people that they are more apprehensive against than the other.
Wow.
Now, I know for a fact that most inner city white officers, they're more afraid of black people, and you can read why. They don't deal with us that much. I think for me personally, I had a problem with the country guy with the cowboy hat and the boots and everything, and it talked all loud and everything, and I had to come away from that. The only way I could do it was to go out and actually meet some people like that and sit down and talk with them and see what they were about. But when you do that, you got to understand that we're all the same. It's, you know, you got different colors and everything, but we all kind of relate in the same way. It was just funny to me that whenever I pulled somebody over that was a cowboy, I could see the hat and everything else. I'm like, this dude got to be crazy. But when you look at it like that, though, until you really get to know people, you're going to have that apprehension about it. And I think in the case of a lot of white officers killing black people, it is because they don't know. They don't know how to react to them. We don't speak the same. We don't give the same greetings or anything. We're completely different. Mm-hmm. So I think that something that will really help the situation is the training. If they will have sensitive class training about different races, meet some of the people, ask them questions, and actually come together, I think that will make a world of difference between officers and how they relate to different races.
So now I have a question. What characteristics do you think a great police officer should possess? Like what should somebody that wants to be a police officer, what characteristics should they have?
Well, first of all, they've got to have a willingness to serve. If they can't serve and have that servitude attitude and understand that it is not just because I got the authority that I act. Yeah. I'm still a servant of the people that I'm actually patrolling. And in regards in the fact that I want to keep everybody else safe by making them do certain things. So I think you first got to have that. Then you got to have an attitude of saying, I got to be open-minded. The fact that whomever I come up against, I can only judge them by our interaction, not by what I think about them or anybody else that I've met like them. If you can't get past that and say, I'm walking up to a black man, I can expect X, Y, and Z. You've got to be able to change that and say, okay, this is a different person than anybody else I've met. I can only make judgment calls on what I come up against. So you got to have that open mind. And the last quality that you got to have, you got to care about people. Because you got a lot of authority over people. When you come up with that badge and your gun and everything else that you carry, you got a lot of authority over people, but you've got to really have the mindset of, okay, I care and I want this person to live just like I want to live. Yeah. So when you have those three characters, I think that's what you need to get started.
Totally agree.
I have a question for like all of us. Like, do you guys think, like, I know a lot of police departments are pushing like diversity, like in the force, right? How much do you guys feel like diversity on the force and diversity training matters when it comes to this? Because I mean, yeah. Did you have diversity training?
I did have some, but I'll say this. I think that the police department should look like the neighborhood that they're actually patrolling in. If you got mostly black people in that audience that you're patrolling, you should have mostly black officers.
Representation.
It should be actually pretty much even in that respect because nobody's going to understand us the way we understand each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's true.
What about you, Jess?
I think it matters a lot, and just like what Mr. Freeman was saying, like there needs to be a heightened like a plethora of information that all police officers should have towards training, because things are so much different now, and there are so many circumstances, and obviously we see a lot of frightened, apprehensive, and also people that lack empathy, that are the rotten apples really taking over how we deem police officers. So I think there needs to be some type of training, needs to be definitely like taken, like they need to sit it down and they need to say, okay, so we need to add this, we need to do this, we need to take this away. Diversity is such a big thing, and I will agree. I do think representation does matter. I truly believe that.
I think that my biggest thing is with the training, like, because I feel like there will never, let me not say never because I hope it does happen, but I feel like there will be so few departments that actually have a force that actually represents the community that they serve. So I feel like it's imperative to be aware and not just like the textbook, like, don't do this.
No, exactly.
I really think that the training should be longer than what it is.
I agree.
Like, yeah, still do the physical and the tests and all of that. I get that part, but I feel like there should be some amount of time in the field that you should spend learning people and getting to know the community and like actually doing some of the outreach programs. Yeah.
I agree.
I'd say this, that a lot of cops really need to actually reverse the roles. I know at one point in time when we played a bad guy and we had the cops to play the good guys, and when you have those handcuffs closed on you, you can't understand the feeling of helplessness until you actually have that. So I've had that experience of
he gave me that same experience
of having.
I'm scared of that.
Yeah, but when you hear those handcuffs click, it's a whole new feeling. You've got to understand that feeling, because when you do it to someone else, you'll understand why they panic.
Wow, yeah.
You may go through the first time of getting handcuffs on, but the next time that you put handcuffs on somebody, they're gonna know the helplessness that they've got.
Exactly.
I think that police officers that they don't realize that they're very vulnerable to some of the situations.
I totally agree. You're really giving us not just a different perspective, but it seems like we're pretty much on the same page when it comes to.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate because that's my favorite role to play.
Yeah.
Do you think that the conversation would be the same if this was a white cop? Because even today, I talked to the police commander here in Nashville, and we all think the same. But do you think it's because like we understand each other, or?
I'll answer that right off the bat. I don't think that it's just the fact that it's black and white. It's the experiences that you've had in life. That's the big driving forces. Because if you've had experiences in different cultures and you've had good and bad experiences, it's going to change you.
I totally agree.
And it should.
I think it's the experience. I don't know if it's just white or black. I think it's the experience, but let me say this. We all know, we all want the same, but when it comes to the events that have transpired, nobody can sit up here and say Breonna Taylor deserved that.
Right.
But you know what I'm saying? But had I spoken with somebody else that may not have had those experiences, police officers that did not have those experiences, it would be, well, how did you know how the cops felt, or what did you think about the cops? But Mr. Freeman, throughout this whole interview, it has been about willingness to serve and the other person, you know? And I think empathy as well as experience, that all correlates, you know? So,
you know,
I don't know.
This is a thing that has shaped me throughout my whole life, I guess, and it makes me look at police officers a different way. I remember my daughter's always talking about how old I am. I am 60 years old, and I'll tell you.
No, you are not 60, Mr. Freeman.
Let's just make that connection. But the thing of it is this. I remember when I used to drive across Mississippi and Alabama into Tennessee to go to college.
Bless your heart.
And I'll tell you, I used to come home on weekends, probably every other weekend, and this same cop stopped me in Mississippi every time, pretty much. I probably have come through there, I would say out of 40 times, he stopped me 30 times.
Oh my God.
But you got to realize this was back in the 70s and early 80s. Every time he would stop me, and I didn't look at it so much as police brutality to so much as far as discrimination.
Yeah.
Every time he stopped me, he did the same thing. He said, come to the door. He said, give me your license, registration. And he said, get out the car. So I would get out the car, and he said, I'm going to write you a ticket. But before I get through writing this ticket, I want you to run around both of these cars 20 times. But you got to realize, though,
that was back in the
day. Mississippi, way out from nobody else. I looked down.
No cell phone.
I still remember it vividly. But I looked down and I looked up at a big shiny 38 revolver.
Oh,
and I broke out in a run. I was through before he got through.
Exactly.
But it taught me some things, and it first taught me to be able to forgive somebody, because the day that I put my badge on and became an officer, I thought about driving to Mississippi. but
I don't blame.
I'm sure he was gone by then.
He probably was dead by then. He probably was gone.
But I remember it so clearly that it was such an injustice, but it really shaped me in the fact that I knew who I didn't want to represent as a police officer.
Wow. Yeah. That's a testimony right there.
It is. And I live to tell about it. Right.
And I will say, Jazz, like, even when he talks about like the empathy piece that he has, like, I feel like that's why I don't get as mad. Like, you know how like the politics conversation you had about like understanding people, because like he had to first do that. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
I'll tell you one of the other big reasons for me is this little guy right here. Yeah.
No.
This is my son.
Hey.
This is somebody that I want to be safe when he gets out of his car. By the time he gets 16 and starts driving, and he's going to look after this one too. But I want to actually educate him and make sure that, you know, police officers nowadays, they know the value that we have in family, and that we're going to take care of each other. So I appreciate you letting me bring them on, let me get them back situated. But it's been an enlightening conversation. I've enjoyed it.
I love how you just, like, he just pretty much just closed this out. He's like, look, okay, that's all I'm saying.
I know how far I can push them. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. They literally just both went in two separate directions.
Great.
Any other questions, Jess?
I just appreciate this conversation. I feel more hopeful.
Yeah, I think that I wish that if we had more young people to actually talk to officers like Commander Graves here in Nashville, and like him, like they can really understand like where they're coming from, and really understand like and really understand like like what's happening, like that they can relate to, then maybe they want to be an officer too. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I remember when I was in high school, we had the DARE police officer, and he was great. He used to tell us don't do drugs. And for the longest, I didn't even want to drink coffee because he said it was a drug. Caffeine was a drug. Just having that influence, you know what I'm saying?
I didn't like DARE, but I also didn't like school, and I just sat there.
Okay, well.
But I don't think that our like DARE person was like somebody that was cool. Like they would just come in and talk and.
Oh my God, he pull up the car, he bring us stuff. He was just great. Oh my God.
I remember DARE, but I don't feel like after DARE, like.
I know. Yeah.
But also, like, I don't know if I just wasn't amused because, like, my dad was a police officer, so I'm like, whatever. I got to, like, stay here. Because, like, he would take me to school literally in his police car. Like, in the back of the police car. And you know you can't open it from the inside.
No.
So he would have to get out.
Get out and open it.
Open it up for me in his uniform every day. Talk about not having a boyfriend. No one ever wanted to talk to me. They were like, oh, your dad's a police officer. Skirt, skirt. Let's link like ways for like if you are interested in becoming a police officer or something like in our description. I think that would be good.
Okay.
Okay, let's sign us off.
Interested or yeah. Okay. Signing off. We want to thank you all so much for listening to this episode or watching this episode of Authentically Natural. We hope something that was said here today gave you a different perspective or inspired you to learn something new. We appreciate you like always. Have an awesome day.
And I just want to give a special shout out and a special thanks to my dad, Donnie Freeman, for coming on to this episode and giving us some insight. Thanks, guys. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast, like, rate, and share us on social media.
All right.